This is Docere Digest Podcast, breaking down health concepts. This podcast is brought to you by Docere Life Center. This innovative clinic is finding new solutions to the evolving challenges mankind faces in the 21st century. By utilizing cutting-edge technology and testing, they find root causes and also offer treatment with energy and nutrition. What is the mission? To dynamically change lives for the better while impacting families for generations. The information shared directly or indirectly in the Docere Digest podcast is not to be understood as or misconstrued as medical advice. This information is not a replacement for your current health provider who is acutely aware of your current health state and course of treatment. Any information shared about a product or service discussed by any host or guest on this podcast is not to be interpreted as a doctor-patient relationship.
You know that feeling when you walk into a room and instantly sense something's wrong, even though nothing looks out of place? Now imagine that happening the moment you step through your front door. Everything looks the same at first, but something feels off. The air is heavy, your throat feels dry, and you start to feel a sense of unease, even dread. As you move through the living room and into the kitchen, you notice that there's grit under your shoes and dust on the counter. Then the smell hits, sharp, chalky, with a damp, earthy undertone. But you still can't find a reason why. So you go from room to room, trying to find evidence to explain your increasing sense of dread. And then you open your bedroom door, the place that should feel safest, and you stop. One wall is completely torn open. The drywall is jagged, the insulation is scattered all over, and a gray film of dust covers your dresser, nightstand, and even your bed. Now, two thoughts hit immediately. What happened here and who did this? But when you look outside, there's no crew, no trucks, and no warning signs. The damage has been done, but the workers are nowhere in sight. That's what mold is like. You didn't invite it, you didn't ask for it, but once it moves in, it starts tearing things down, and most people don't even realize it's happening until the damage is already well underway. Now, maybe that seems familiar to you. Not because a wall's been mysteriously ripped open in your house, but because you felt the effects of mold in your own life. You see, mold creeps in quietly. You might notice a faint musty smell when you open the basement door, or you might see a little dark patch spreading on the grout in the bathroom, but often you can't see anything at all. But even if you can't see it, sometimes you can feel it. So let's see if any of this sounds familiar. You wake up feeling heavy and groggy even after a full night's sleep. By late morning, a dull pressure settles behind your eyes. In the afternoon, the world feels just farther away and like the lights inside your head have been dimmed. Little things start to bother you. Perfume in the hall, the cleaner someone used at work, or even the sound of the vent turning on. Climbing the stairs leaves you short of breath, and you have mysterious sneezing and coughing that just kind of comes on randomly. By evening, you're wiped, but sleep still doesn't restore you. And maybe, like so many people I've met, you've tried to get help. You've gone to the doctors, you've done the tests, but the only responses you get are, well, everything looks normal, or maybe it's just stress, or even worse, it's all in your head. But deep down, you know something isn't right. Your health feels like it's slipping away, and nobody can tell you why. If that's you, don't give up hope. Even though you haven't found the answers yet, that doesn't mean they don't exist. Perhaps mold is the answer you've been missing. Mold is a real threat, and its effects on people are diverse and sometimes quite dangerous. And the reason it's so overwhelming is because it's a hidden infection that does its work unseen, breaking things down little by little until your home and even your health feel like they're quietly falling apart. Welcome to the first video of my series on mold. I'm Dr. Caleb Frank, a chiropractor and holistic healthcare provider, and for years I've sat across from patients who felt exactly like I just described, confused by their symptoms and dismissed by the very professionals they thought would help them. They've seen doctor after doctor, been through test after test, heard diagnosis after diagnosis, and gone through treatment after treatment. Still with no answers and no relief. So many of them spent years searching for answers, and what I discovered is that for many of them, A stealth infection like mold was the hidden demolition crew behind it all. And this isn't just something I've seen in my patients, it's something I've wrestled with in my own health too. And I know firsthand how heavy and discouraging it can feel. And that's why I'm making this series. So as we go through these videos, my goal is simple: to help you understand what mold is, why it matters, and most importantly, what you can do about it. Here's the surprising part. Mold isn't actually the bad guy. In nature, mold is an essential part of the ecosystem. It's part of the design, and without it, most, if not all, of the Earth's forest and plant life would have died off a long time ago. You see, the purpose of mold is to act as the demolition crew of creation, clearing away what's dead and broken so something new can grow. Just think about that for a second. If you were to walk in a forest later this fall, you will likely see a forest floor that's covered with fallen leaves and branches. So for the sake of illustration, let's hone in on what would happen to a single branch that falls in the forest. So after it falls, rain comes and soaks the bark. Soon, tiny threads of life begin weaving through the wood. Mushrooms bloom up and over time collapse. Beetles, ants, and microbes all take their turn. And over weeks, the hard edges of that branch begin to soften. And weeks or even months later, it gets to the point where it's so soft you can crumble it in your hand. So this act of breaking down and decomposing the leaves and the branches that fall down on the forest floor returns nutrients to the roots around it, which provides rich soil for new life to grow in. Now imagine how that forest would look if those leaves and branches didn't break down and return to the soil. How would it look just the next year, or the next decade, or even the next century? It wouldn't take all that long for the forest floor to be so cluttered that nothing underneath could breathe or grow. Without decomposers like mold, most ecosystems would die off, leaving a cluttered wasteland behind. So there's actually a lot of good that mold does in this world. Maybe even enough for you to be grateful the next time you take in that deep earthy smell after a heavy rain, because you know that mold is quietly doing its job and continuing the cycle of life. So we can see that outdoors, mold isn't really a villain at all. It's absolutely vital. The problem comes when mold shows up where we don't want it to, when that demolition crew starts working in the wrong place. It's like hiring someone to tear down an old shed out back, only to find them ripping apart your bedroom wall instead. With mold, what is helpful in one setting can be quite harmful in another. So why does mold show up in some places but not others? That's because mold doesn't grow just anywhere. It actually needs 3 specific conditions to be met before it can get to work: moisture, organic matter, and darkness. So think of moisture as the fuel. It's the primary driving agent because without it, mold can't grow. That's why leaks, spills, and high humidity are so risky. A tiny drip under a sink, unnoticed for weeks, is enough to keep a colony alive and spreading. Organic matter is the meal. So mold feeds on things that once came from life: wood and paper and drywall, the fibers in carpet and fabric, cardboard boxes, even the film of household dust that's mostly skin cells and lint. All of that is food for the mold to grow on. And darkness is the cover. So mold thrives out of the light, behind walls, under floors, inside basements, closets, and crawl spaces. It prefers places we don't regularly see, and that is why many people, even in clean, tidy homes, may be exposed to mold on a daily basis without realizing it. And here's something else that most people don't realize. Your body can actually provide the same 3 conditions required for mold to grow. Parts of you are warm and moist, built of living tissue, and tucked away from the light, like your sinuses, your lungs, and your gut. When those conditions line up, what continues life in a forest can start to destroy life in a person. And that's when the demolition starts shifting from the house to your health. Part of the danger of mold is that it can spread quickly, especially if it is somewhere hidden. This is because mold colonies spreads by sending spores into the air. These spores are microscopic seeds released by an active colony. They're invisible to our eyes, light enough to float along an air current, and tough enough to ride out harsh conditions. So think of spores kind of like demolition dust. If you've ever walked through a renovation site, you've seen how dust coats everything. It settles on shelves, finds the seams and closed doors, and shows up in rooms you never touched. In the similar way, a small patch of mold on a bathroom wall rarely stays small. As it grows, it releases spores that drift into the air and settle onto the nearest right surface. That could be the silicone around the tub, the caulk line at the baseboard, the shower curtain liner, the window sash that sweats in winter, or even the back edge of a vanity where air barely moves. It can quickly take over a whole room if it isn't noticed and taken care of quickly. And spread isn't just limited to one corner of the house either. Everyday life does the transporting. Air currents from the vent, the push or pull of opening doors, the sweep of a vacuum, bare feet padding down a hallway, or even a dog brushing past a baseboard. Also, central HVAC systems can even lift those particles and share them with every room that's connected. Some spores even behave like smoke, lingering in the air, slipping through tiny gaps, and showing up where you would never expect. Others may hitch a ride on fabrics and fur and go wherever you go. That's why exposure doesn't only happen at home. Schools, offices, cars, hotels. If spores are present, they can follow you. And once mold takes hold in a new spot, the cycle repeats. Growth, release, and expansion. The demolition keeps spreading. So here's an interesting thought. Mold has basically been around forever, right? So why does it feel like it's a bigger problem now than it was even just several decades ago? First, our buildings have changed. In the 1970s, the energy crisis pushed buildings and coders toward tighter, more energy-efficient homes. This was double-pane windows, house wraps and vapor barriers, more insulation, and even weather stripping. All of this was great for our utility bills, but they also trapped air indoors. In many regions, we also added central AC, which often cools the air faster than it removes humidity, especially if the system is oversized. These short cooling cycles mean less dehumidification and more lingering moisture in the air. So modern designs also favor complex roof lines and low slope areas that can hold water, finished basements with drywall against concrete, and exterior sheathing like OSB that swells when wet. Put all of that together and you have tighter envelopes, more moisture opportunities, and fewer paths for damp air to escape. Then we also had a change in materials. Instead of plaster and solid wood, we rely on drywall, MDF, particle board, and even fluffy insulation. All of these are a rich and easy food source for mold if they get damp. Now, yes, we have water-resistant wraps and paints that can help with splashes, but they're not waterproof barriers, and small leaks can still get behind them and smolder for months unseen. So another thing is how we live our lives has changed. Most people now spend close to 90% of their time indoors, whether at home, at work, or even in cars. And then open plan layouts mean air and anything in it is shared across bigger spaces. We add humidifiers, lots of houseplants, and sometimes we keep windows closed for months. If mold is present, you're marinating in the same air for long stretches instead of getting the breeze and sunlight that nature provides. Finally, our bodies carry a much heavier load than they did in the past. Compared to past generations, we're exposed to more synthetic chemicals such as microplastics and pollutants. We're under more chronic stress, and we sleep less. All of that strains detox and immune systems. And while the science is still developing, early research and clinician experience suggests certain electromagnetic exposures or EMF fields may influence microbial behavior or stress biology in ways that don't help us. And EMF fields may even increase mold spore and toxin production dramatically. So with all this said, when mold shows up, It usually isn't just one more thing. It often becomes the tipping point, the final hammer swing that brings a fragile structure down. Not because mold is new, but because our homes and our bodies are less able to keep it in check. So I think of one patient of mine who, on paper, she had allergies, she had congested sinuses, a nagging cough, headaches, and at night she had really broken sleep, if she was able to sleep at all. So she woke up, most of the time she was already really tired, her face felt swollen, and she lived in a kind of fog that made even simple tasks feel hard. For years, the only answer she heard was, "It's just allergies." And then when she asked about the fatigue and brain fog, the suggestion was, "Maybe it's depression." Now, when she came to us, we looked at the bigger picture and we found that mold was a part of her story. She had testing done on her house and it confirmed that there was mold in her bathroom, the bedroom, and even some contamination in the HVAC system. This means day after day, every breath she took carried it in deeper. And then once we were able to get that cleared up, we were able to shut the demolition crew down and we supported her body. Things started to shift for her. The fog lifted, she could breathe through her nose again, and she could even sleep mostly through the night. Sleep started to restore her instead of exhaust her. Energy returned, and with it, her life. That's the power of recognizing mold for what it is. Once you see it, you can finally do something about it. So what can you do right now? Well, let's keep it simple because simple steps can sometimes make the biggest difference. First, trust your senses. If something smells off, it probably is. If you smell a mustiness in the closet, or a wet cardboard scent in the basement, or even a stale odor near a bathroom, those might not be just old house smells or character smells. They're clues. Next, take a slow walk and look around through your house. Open the cabinets, look under the sinks, run your hand along baseboards near exterior walls, look closely at windowsills and around showers, look for discoloration or bubbling paint. You don't need fancy tools to start, just curiosity and attention. Then, listen to your body. Do you feel clearer and lighter away from home? Like, for instance, if you're on a vacation or if you have a long day outside, and then once you come home, you start to feel heavy and worn down again? Write that down. Notice the patterns. Patterns are evidence, and evidence is what guides action. If something seems off, make a note of it, snap a photo, and consider keeping a simple log. Awareness won't fix things overnight, but it turns on the light, and mold loses its power in the light. Now, I know mold can feel like it's tearing your life apart in more ways than one. It breaks down your home, yes, but even more painful, it can break down your health, your energy, and even your hope. If you're watching this and thinking, "That's me, that's my story," hear me. You don't have to do this alone. We specialize in uncovering mold-related illnesses, not just the obvious cases, but the hidden ones that get missed, dismissed, or even mislabeled for years. We walk with you step by step, identifying where the demolition is happening and giving your body the support it needs to rebuild. I've seen patients go from barely making it through the day to having energy, clarity, and joy restored. It wasn't always an easy process, but once the demolition stops, the body is remarkably ready to heal. The damage isn't permanent. Homes can be rebuilt, health can be restored, and hope can be renewed. That's why we're here. So here's what I want you to carry from today. Mold isn't always the enemy. Outside is part of the cycle of life. However, inside your home or inside your body, it becomes a demolition crew you didn't hire, didn't invite, and you definitely don't want. And by the time you can see or even feel the damage, it's often been at work for a while. That's why awareness matters. Once you can name it, you can face it, and then you can change it. In the next video, we'll unpack the crucial differences between outdoor and indoor molds and why one is a part of life while the other can quietly tear it apart. If this video gave you a light bulb moment, if you're starting to connect the dots between mold and what's happening in your own health journey, then I'm really glad that you are here. If you know someone else who's struggling and they're having a hard time finding answers as well, I encourage you to share this video with them. It just might be the path they've been missing in their own health journey. And if you want to keep walking this journey with me, make sure you like this video and subscribe so you can join in the rest of the series. Each part will help build your understanding and give you practical steps to take, moving you from confusion and frustration to clarity and hope. I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Docere Digest podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. You can also find all the episodes and show notes over at docerelifecenter.com. While you're on the website, also be sure to check out the blog where you'll find videos and articles to help you proactively rebalance your health.